This is now an HHC 2025 report. Most of you know, we have our conferences or mini conferences. In America they have not HPCC conferences, they have Hewlett-Packard handheld conferences, HHC, every year. This year it was HHC 2025. Mark Ringrose, who isn't with us but is a member, was there. Bruce was there, and your wife was there?
Yes.
And I was there too. And this is the conference schedule, which I didn't put up on the screen, which is just as well considering I've tripped up and damaged the wire for it. But anyone who wants a copy, and I and Bruce will try to go through what happened there very rapidly. I guess I need a copy too. There was an online registration, and there were actually 42 people at it, which is better than us, but considering it's worldwide as opposed to our just British plus friends conference, we're doing pretty well with 16 people here today. All right, it started on Friday evening. People rolled up at the hotel, which was near Orlando Airport. Registration at 7:30 in the morning. A welcome by Richard Nelson, who set up the original HP Calculators Club. Bob Prosperi, one of our members, described what the prizes were, lots more prizes than we had today. Then people introduced themselves. At a conference here years and years ago, I insisted that everyone introduce themselves, and everybody hated it. So since then we've never said stand up and say who you are, but they still do it in the US, which is probably more sensible because really people do come from all over the world, and new people do turn up. There is a programming contest at these conferences, and that was introduced.
I just wanted to say something miraculous happened to that introduction, because the first conference I ever went to, it went on and on and on and on as people waffled over everything. And this time it ran exactly to time, almost to about 2 minutes, and it kept everything short and sweet, and it was very useful.
Yes, a lot of people just stood up and said, "Hi, I'm person X from place Y, United States. Thank you very much, nice to be here," and sat down again. So that made up for those who did waffle. Such as me, I think, Bruce. I tried to advertise HPCC after all. Eric Recklin, who keeps a detailed and huge archive of HP documentation. It is quite immense. He is missing about 2 or 3 manuals for all HP products, calculator products.
Just 2 manuals.
Sorry?
He's only missing 2 manuals out of the entire.
Yes.
collection.
And he's now collecting other foreign language manuals as well.
Wow.
He introduced what's new on his drive. These are now 0.5 terabyte drives, nearly all full. He gives them away free at the conference and then charges £80 a shot, thank you Bruce, for other people to buy them, which helps cover the costs.
You can make a copy, but it will take you 2 hours.
Yes.
Okay. To buy one is $80.
To buy one is $80, yes.
I've got one from 2 years ago.
We then had a break, and I was then given the opportunity to speak, and I was amazed that I'd been put at the beginning of the conference. I gave a sort of general waffly talk about whether the 71B is still relevant, because people are forever making add-ons for the 41. We had 2 talks about that today, didn't we? Joe about something you made long ago but it's still fascinating, and Mark about all the things that can be done with it. But there are not many talks about this guy. However, there are add-ons made for it, something called the FRAM module, for example. And I asked, is this machine still relevant? Sorry?
There was a Zenrom also for the Zen.
No, that was the JP Zenrom. The Zenrom was for this. There was a Zen wand for this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'll come later to why they put me at the beginning. Anyway, my conclusion, I wouldn't have made the talk if I hadn't said, yes, of course it's still relevant, for a variety of reasons, and I've got copies of my talk if someone wants it. We were then given a chance to meet Nicole Jordan from a company called Heritage Werks, using the German spelling, not the English spelling, who are a specialist archiving company. They archive things and information. Now, you may remember HP had their own archive in Northern California in a nice big forest which burnt down. And the entire HP archive burnt down with it. So HP said, well, we are now going to renew our archive and we're going to put it into the hands of a specialist, not our own. And Heritage Works are a very well-known archiving company which has 3 separate sites around Atlanta in Georgia, which are very highly secure and which probably won't burn down. A, because there isn't much forest in Atlanta, and B, because they are really well protected. Anyway, they have been collecting various stuff from HP, and calculators are quite important. For a few years, calculators were the major product from HP. She thought we'd be a bunch of geeks and it wasn't worth coming, but Brock was very convinced her that it was worth coming, and they put me at the beginning to show that people from all over the world come to these conferences, not just US people. What amazed her was that we were offering her information instead of wanting information from the archive, which is unusual, and made her quite enthusiastic. We were going to help her grow the collection of information about HP calculators. So she was very polite to us, said yes, talk to her, she's willing to give us information, and she wants 3 copies of my book, which is going to cost me quite a packet because the book's expensive. Anyway, it went very well. We then had lunch, we had a photograph. Bruce.
So they also managed the garage, so the Bill and Dave's garage in Palo Alto, they managed the visitors for that. Keep the neighbours sweet, keep the building thing. So if the next conference can be out in that side of the country, they'll be able to give us a tour. Alternatively, if it's somewhere near Atlanta, they might be able to give us a tour of their facilities. But it's interesting that they manage to, they physically manage a building as well as just archive.
About 10 years ago, I was out there and with Richard Nelson, we just drove up to the garage, parked outside and had a look at it. At the time, people knew it was there, and occasionally people would come, but it wasn't a pilgrimage site, as it seems to have become. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, lunch, photograph, and then Jake Schwartz spoke about his archive. Jake has a more specialized archive online of stuff, but he includes all our data files. He's got an archive of PPC calculator journals, PPC computer journals, then there was HPX, there was CHU, and he's got and is continuing to archive our calculator journals. So he talked about what's new with him. He is still looking for special issue C that we published, and that is probably in Dave's loft, but nobody's got the time and the health to actually go and look for it. I will probably invade you one day, Dave, and look.
Bring knee pads.
Okay. Maybe a suit of armour?
Knee pads.
Knee pads. Okay, right, promise. Then we had a fascinating talk from Moravia. A man who works for Moravia came and told us what they're doing, what they're planning next. As we've already mentioned, their next product will be HPCC Special Edition. What he said was that they aren't really in the business of making new models from scratch, but they are willing to make models using the machinery they currently have. Now, what he said was that the HP17B2 is at the end of life, but they have got the machinery to make it, and they could use the machinery to make a batch of HP42S models if they have the code, but they don't have the code. So we're going to try to find the code, or else talk them into using FreeForty2. I don't know, about half of you probably know what FreeForty2 is. It's an emulator, an absolutely brilliant emulator. So that was Moravia. Gary Carter talked about his developments of RPN as a language. He's got it runs mainly on PCs, doesn't it? It's not something that he puts into calculators, but developments of the RPN language.
New RPN.
New RPN. That's it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Gene Wright, just to annoy us, talks about TI calculators. Gene Wright used to talk about HP calculators, but he's lately taken to telling us that TI weren't all that bad, and they were an interesting competitor. And he talked this time about models made TI-88 and onwards. When the 41 was hugely successful, TI started trying to make models that would compete with the 41. And they did a raft of things, most of which were either not successful or did not sell well. And he talked about them, fascinating. And then he had a brief interlude called Calculator Dance. How can you make moves in a dance that suggest various things? You know, you stand like this, and it looks like an E, so it's the number E, and so on. I'm not quite sure how you stand to make yourself look like a pie, but that's the sort of thing he did. Just a joke. Okay, a break. Richard Nelson talked about digital multimeters. It's not really relevant to calculators, but lots of us use digital multimeters when testing calculators. And he, Dave?
Didn't HP have a handheld multimeter that used one of the HP calculator
Yes.
chips?
The Logic Dart.
No, before that.
Oh, before that. Yes, they did as well.
I don't know what its name was. I've never seen one, but it did exist and it did have a calculator chip in it.
That would be very interesting.
That's a Tony
Sorry.
question.
No, that's fine.
I don't think Tony's got one.
So definitely a Tony question.
Something to find.
Yeah.
The point is that you can now get really dirt cheap Chinese-made digital multimeters, and Richard bought, I think, 6 of one particular one, just to do a statistical analysis of how accurate they are. But he has one particular model which is slightly more expensive than the others, which he absolutely swears by. I can't remember what it is. I've got notes on it. Anyway, it was an interesting talk in that digital multimeters are of great interest to many of us, particularly if we're taking a 41 apart and make sure what's working and what isn't. Jim Johnson talked about HP calculator hardware. Bruce, what did he talk about? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. He's not an ex-HP employee either, is he?
Was he
Oh.
extracting ROMs or something?
He's the guy whom I met in Dakis a few months ago, and I gave him a 71, and he paid for a 71. If it comes back to me, I'll tell you. Okay, Eric Smith, who has created emulators for many calculators, also works with the chips for them. He always comes up with a really weird title, Scalable Reptoid from the Outer Reaches. You know, it sounds like science fiction. It's a reptoid because there is a particular chip that is often used that's called, after some reptile, I can't remember, it's a newt, no, it's not a newt because those are amphibians, but it's some sort of lizard.
The reptile name just came out of his very first talk, and it was gecko or something like
Gecko,
that.
that's it,
And then
yes.
he just kept using reptile references.
Okay.
There's no further meaning particularly anymore.
Other than it sounds cool.
Right. The point of his talk was that his emulators, he is rewriting the code from scratch using C. Which particular version of C?
C#?
Not C# and not C++, CN I think he calls it. Anyway, it's a version of C that suits him well, and it's not C++ because he doesn't like object-oriented. But
Everybody uses
it's a version of C for which there are very good libraries available, so he doesn't have to do all the maths himself.
I can't remember which one,
standard C++.
but it was just a rewrite to code factor and tidy up and this kind of thing. You know. the first stuff he wrote 20 odd years ago, and he wasn't such a good programmer in those days. And he's learned a lot along the way, so it's all about kind of improving the quality. And
Was it Objective-C?
no, I think I would have recognised it if he'd said that.
She says he does all projects.
Anyway, he is helping HP a lot.
Might just,
And Moravia.
It might just be C99 or
Maybe.
more recent one.
MCC.
Okay, we then had a talk from Chuck McCord, who was one of the people here. He worked at HP, he worked on various handhelds, he was in charge of the upgrade of the Voyagers to be one chip as opposed to two. And they were going to make it into one chip because HP calculators were buying the chips for these internally from some other part of HP and thought it was too expensive buying two chips. So HP internally, in order to save money internally, redesigned the chip for this. And he had at first thought it would be impossible, but then he did it. Anyway, what he talked about this time was construction calculators. Do you realize that although calculators are somewhat less popular than they used to be, people in the construction industry have special calculators made for them with buttons to convert feet and inches to meters, with triangle solvers built in, because whenever you're building a staircase or a sloping roof, you need triangle solutions and so on. He showed a range of them. Some companies have stopped making them, but they are still being made. That was a very interesting talk. And then he went on to talk about a comparison between video game history preservation and calculator history preservation. He said that video game preservation is similar to us, except that video games are a $1 billion industry as opposed to calculator being $1 million industry. And there is a group of dedicated geeks, a bit like us, who try to save all the old games. The difference is that game manufacturers, when a game goes out and they stop making it, they tend to destroy the game and destroy the code so that nobody else can get it. And people who use them have quite a hard time preserving them, both convincing the companies that actually this has historical value, it's no financial use to you anymore, nobody plays Bill the Builder or whatever, but actually they do. So there is a problem here, but they are preserving games, and just as we've had problems with libraries suddenly vanishing and being destroyed, so there was a particular publication, a monthly publication in the US about games, which had a huge library of old games and documents about them. And what happened was the journal went out of business, everybody goes online, but the remaining store in the building was kept, and then these geeks went and decided to save it all, and it turned out somebody had emptied half the filing cabinets and just chucked the stuff out. So it's the same story as with us. You've really got to work hard to preserve stuff, which is all the better that we've now got professional archivists for HP. Okay, Namir Shamas was going to talk about random number generators, but we'd run out of time. And David Hayden talked about, he's produced a book with HP41 programs for all the significant formulae in an old book called Calculator Calculus. There's a book made in the 1980s, I think, really interesting book with formulae and how to program calculus. It was both for students and for engineers who needed it. He has produced a book with programs in 41 for it and barcode for it. And then we went off and had a meal and went to bed, and then the next day, those of us who wanted to go to Mass, no one here apart from me, we went to Mass in the local Catholic Cathedral, which is a very nice building. Then we had breakfast, then building a classic battery from scratch. If you want to build yourself a battery, not for a 41, but for the classic calculators, you can either buy one online, which is very expensive, or you can take an old one apart and try to put it together yourself and make a mess of it. David Ramsey showed that there are actual packs designed to hold 3 AA batteries, which fit very nicely into the old classic calculators. And he showed how you can make your own battery out of it. You can put in either nickel metal hydride batteries or nickel cadmium batteries, and it was pointed out that you aren't allowed to buy nickel cadmium batteries anymore in Europe because cadmium, like lead, is dangerous. And just as we're not allowed to use lead solder because this much will poison the environment, but you're still allowed to put 10 tons of it on a cathedral roof, so similarly you can't use nickel cadmium batteries in Europe anymore, but you can still use tons of cadmium in all sorts of industrial processes. So we would have to buy nickel metal hydride batteries, but nevertheless it was very interesting. Then Bob Prosperi introduced Minder Cooper's Tulip 401, which is a module that will plug into the back of a 41 and do half of the modules that Mark described will do in one. He's built a first batch and he's taking orders for the second batch. The Tulip, I think, stands for the ultimate limited
Yeah, something.
integrated processor, something like that.
Peripherals?
Yes, peripherals, yes.
Can't remember, yeah, something.
Anyway, it is a single module that does most of half of what the other modules do.
Yeah, it's slightly different because it needs to be tethered to a PC.
Mm-hmm.
So you use a terminal on the PC to issue commands to the microprocessor in the Tulip, and then you can tell it to, the Tulip will then emulate ROM space, or but basically it's a Raspberry Pi Pico microcontroller that sits and monitors the HP41 bus. So anything that you can stick on a 41 bus, he in theory can emulate.
Okay.
Is the gist.
Anyway, it's a great module and it's wonderful that people are still developing stuff. Random number generators then. Bruce, did they go in the order in which it's on the timetable? Richard Schwartz and then Namir Shamas, or the other way around?
No, it was in that order. Yeah.
Okay. Richard Schwartz is really a brilliant chap who has been with HPCC forever. And he talked about various formulae for random number generators, and then he went off into advanced number theory, which was...
He didn't really talk about random number generators at all. He talked about statistical generating numbers that match a statistical pattern, so a Poisson distribution or something. So it was Galton's theory that he discussed. So it's like the 1780 method for generating numbers that fit a statistical curve, and he just redid that. So I think the title was slightly misleading.
Yes.
It was better than it appears.
It was absolutely great. He talked about the Euler formula for predicting how many random numbers there are at any place in the infinite series, and then corrections to that. And then he went off into number theory and how you find out whether something is a prime or not a prime. Apparently the is prime function on the 50G gets it wrong in one case.
Was it 561 or 581?
Yes.
That is a Carmichael number, so it comes up as prime, but it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was fascinating, but it was number theory.
Yeah.
And then Namir Shamas, who also comes to these talks year after year after year, talked about, he talks repeatedly about random number generators. He keeps trying to find a better random number generator, studying them. He had some particular metric, and none of his had quite met it. And he admitted at the end that for game purposes on calculators, the simplest one is simply 967 times the previous seed and then take the fractional part. And that is still the best and simplest random number generator if you're not doing something really serious. Lunch, prime bookie. Oh, this was a fascinating. This is a chap who'd never been to the conferences before, and he talked about a program that he'd written in 2 days when his boss was away, so he had free time, for a prime to be used to read books. it created his own fonts and all sorts of stuff. It seemed very odd. He is an odd character, but absolutely brilliant. So you can now use your Prime to read books if you haven't actually got
A
a Kindle or something with you.
But you have to prepare them on a PC first. It doesn't do it all on the phone. But it was weird and wacky, but
Yes.
very interesting as a result.
Well, that's the problem.
Being unusual.
Absolutely. And then the final talk was about photographing calculators on a budget, and it really was a brilliant talk. It's how to get good photos of calculators using just your iPhone or whatever, and a simple stand. He talked about making boxes to put them in so that the lighting is even. He reminded us that we should clean our calculators before photographing them, otherwise bits of dust actually make the picture horrible. It was such a good talk that it won Best Speaker Prize after tea. And then we just had a prize draw, like now. We didn't have time really for a wide-ranging discussion, but we did discuss where the next meeting should be held. We thought West Coast, because it hasn't been on the West Coast for a long time. And Jeff Quickfall, who used to come to these meetings regularly, he's now retired as a pilot, so he doesn't get free flights to London anymore. But we thought we would try him to have a meeting in Vancouver in Canada, because these meetings have virtually always been either in London or somewhere in the US. Having one in Canada would be great. After that it was just chatting, tidying up, and then farewell breakfast the next day, and goodbye. So it was a great meeting. Have I overrun my time, or have I got to keep talking for another 10 minutes?
Yeah, it's good.
No, exactly on the dot, aren't I? Right. Thanks very much. If anyone wants either one of these calculators or to talk about the US conference, I'm happy to carry on talking, but end the talk. Thanks.